One of the people I've been mentoring recently, he was doing $24,000 a month. And then he recently had a $400,000 a month on YouTube. As weird as this sounds, it's much easier to get 5 million views on one video than 100,000 views on 50 videos. Does that make sense a little bit?
So MrBeast literally just broke down what 10X is. He talked about how 10X is really about quality, and he talked about focusing on less but better. Welcome back to the 10X is Easier Than 2X YouTube series. This is episode 7. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the difference between quality versus quantity. Really, this is getting to the heart of what it means to go 10X, but it also goes to the quality of what 10X actually is. A lot of times how people view 10X is simply a quantitative 10X. And this is where 10X is pretty much been conflated with just money. Make 10 times more money, just add a zero. How I view 10X is that 10X is not necessarily quantitative at the core, it's actually qualitative. And when you talk about qualitative, you're talking about the quality of something. So as an example, I view 10X meaning you've gone, like an actual evolution has occurred. So for example, a baby going from crawling to walking is what I view as a 10X jump. They've gone from crawling to now being able to walk. And now as a walker, they now have unbelievable freedoms and opportunities and potentials that were not available to them in a former state. And a huge example that we give in the book 10X is Easier Than 2X about a 10X jump or a qualitative change where you may be in the same industry. So for example, crawling to walking is a qualitative change. Going from horse and buggy to a car is a qualitative change. It still may be in the transportation industry, but now qualitatively, it's really different. The quality of the transportation is totally different, and a car provides enormous possibilities and potentials that a horse doesn't. A really great example, and I'm going to share my screen in a second because I want to show you that it's really quality and getting 10 times higher quality that opens up the 10X quantity. And I'm going to use an example of MrBeast. I'm going to share my screen and show a short video. I'm going to actually be sharing my screen and be reacting to the video in real time of an interview where MrBeast talked about this idea. He talked about an exponential psychology. He talked about getting exponential results is really about quality, not quantity. And it's really about becoming the best in the world at what you do. And I'll share a few thoughts on that in a second. But a core example I want to give, and it's an example we give in the book, is Steve Jobs. Back in the late 90s, Steve Jobs really wanted to innovate music. And if you think about first principles means that you break something down to its component parts, and then you actually find a more useful, powerful way at achieving the desired result. And when it came to the 1990s, the music scene back then, and even just the music industry, was CDs, albums. If you heard a song you loved on the radio, and if you wanted to own that, you had to go to the store and buy a CD, and you would buy a CD for 15, 20 bucks. And you would have 15 songs on the CD that you didn't really want, except for you just wanted the one or two that you wanted. And then you would carry around and lug around a big bag of CDs with 80% of music that you don't want. Using the 80-20 principle, what Steve Jobs did was he focused on the 20% of music that really mattered, and he stripped away the 80% and made it 10 times easier and better to consume music.
What is iPod? iPod is an MP3 music player, has CD quality music. But the biggest thing about iPod is it holds 1,000 songs. Now, this is a quantum leap because for most people, it's their entire music library. This is huge.
So he stripped away the need to go to the store. You could now buy music digitally using iTunes. He stripped away the need to buy a full album. Instead, you could just buy one song, the one song you wanted, and you could put all those songs that you want on a small device and have them all in your pocket rather than needing to carry around with you 200 CDs and plugging them in one at a time.
There it is, right there.
So going from CDs to an iPod was a qualitative transformation. It's like going from crawling to walking or from horse and buggy to a car. That qualitative transformation, that evolution, is the core of what it means to go 10X. And then that new transformation opens up massive quantitative possibilities. It's what allowed Apple and iTunes to scale at the level they did, is because they made that innovation. They made it simpler. And this is what Steve Jobs talked about. Really what innovation is it's a simplification. You simplify before you multiply. And this is why you want to go deep into the 20% and strip away the 80%. And so now with this insight, the 10X is really about quality, not quantity. And that in order to fully go 10X, you actually have to get really good at what you do. 10X, it means you're getting 10 times better, but also 10 times more unique. Dan Sullivan, and we have a concept on this in chapter 3, he has a concept called unique ability. And that's about doing something uniquely well. It also fits with episode 6 in this series about doing what you want, wanting what you want, stripping away more and more of the layers of the David, and operating based on intrinsic motivation. And there's a great book actually by Robert Greene called Mastery. And really what mastery is, and mastery in my opinion is similar to unique ability. Mastery means that you are doing something uniquely well. There's a total difference between being a master and being an expert. Experts are people who are great at what they do, but they're not unique. They're not masters. Masters are people who do something uniquely well, and they are innovating. Like they're not copying anyone. They're doing it their own unique way. They see things from unique angles. They're not just essentially an expert in a craft. They are a master, meaning they are innovating. They're changing the game. They're doing it their own way. They're seeing everything from a new lens. In order to go 10x, you have to develop a much deeper level of mastery, which means that you've got to focus on higher quality and less quantity, which means, and this hits to the idea of attention, that if you have 10 things that you're doing, for example, if you're trying to approach the day with 10 items on your to-do list, we already know that you're not applying the 80-20 principle. You have 8 things on that to-do list, which either should be delegated or eliminated, and you focus on the few things which matter, higher quality, less quantity, and you go deep on those things. This also hits to the idea of bottleneck and the idea of attention, that to go 10x, your attention has to go deeper on higher quality and less quantity. And so if you're a business owner, as an example, and this book was written for entrepreneurs in mind, but you don't have to be an entrepreneur to apply this idea. The idea here is that, and there's a great book on this subject as well called Catching the Big Fish, and he talks about how attention is like the ocean, and if you're up at the surface, all you can see is small fish. And in order to catch the big fish, you've got to go down deep, and you'll start to see 10x, 100x bigger fishes, more valuable fishes than you could see up at the surface. So if you're thinking about attention and consciousness as a key component of quality, not quantity, then one point here is that you want to strip away 80% of what you're paying attention to. You want to have a much deeper focus on less but better, and you want to go deep, not shallow, and that's a key component of 10x. And so you want to focus on less but better. And you want to focus on the few things that matter and get 10 times better at those few things, and either delegate or eliminate entirely the 80% from your life. So when it comes to stripping away the 80%, one of the biggest components is that it's no longer on your cognitive plate, your cognitive load, and also your decision fatigue. A big part of willpower is about making tons of decisions. And so when you delegate or you get a who, using the language of who, not how, you let someone else handle something, or you just eliminate it altogether, so that no longer is it draining your decision fatigue and willpower, but also it's no longer logging up your cognitive load. It's like removing tabs from your computer. You want to strip away so much, and you want to go just deep on a few things, which goes into a lot of the research on flow, but also on depth and on quality. So if you think about any master, if you think about Michelangelo, and if you think about his sculptures, the David as an example, it's really about quality. The reason we know who he is because of the phenomenal quality at which he created his things. Now I'm going to share MrBeast as an example. MrBeast is the biggest YouTuber in the world, and the only reason we know who he is not because of the quantity of videos he's made, but because of the quality of videos he made. Now this brings up an important point, and that's the difference between quantity and quality. And yes, from a practice standpoint, like deliberate practice is essentially the field of psychology about how to become an expert. And Malcolm Gladwell popularized the idea of the 10,000 hour rule, which is focused on quantity of time and an accumulation of experience. But it's not about quantity of experience to become an expert or a master. It's about the quality of your experience and the quality of your practice and what that practice is leading towards. So it's not only about the quality of your experiences, but it's also about what those experiences are directed at. As an example, and I've talked about this about impossible goals, I think it was episode 4 in this, that it's not just about the quality of your experience, but it's also about the quality of what you're going for. And we're going to get to MrBeast in a second, because he was very clear that his future self was, he really wanted to be the top YouTuber in the world. And so that goal, that seemingly impossible goal, shaped his process. It shaped his practice. And I use the example of my son, Caleb, who is a tennis player. He's a high school tennis player. And the process, if his goal was to go for college, that would shape a different process or form of deliberate practice as if he wanted to go for pro. The much higher, steeper growth curve for pro would shape a much different type of deliberate practice, a much different type of focus. And so it's not about quantity of experience, although often it does obviously take quantity of reps and quantity of practice, but it's really about the quality of that practice and what that practice is toward. If you're going for a 10x improvement, then that's going to shape a much different level of expertise and value. You're going to be going for bigger fish. And so with that said, I want to share MrBeast. I'm going to share his screen. I'm going to share this and I'm going to interact with this. I'm going to react to what he's saying. He very clearly explains these ideas that going 10x and thinking exponential, and he's speaking specifically as a YouTuber, is about quality more than quantity. And you've got to get really good at what you do. And that once you start focusing on quality, then the results become exponential. If you're just focused on creating 1,000 videos as an example, you may not be getting better. Just like if you're trying to accumulate, just doing something over and over and over again doesn't necessarily mean you're getting better. This is why habits are not necessarily the right approach to growth. Deliberate practice is actually the opposite of habits. Habits means you're doing something the same way over and over, and honestly on autopilot, whereas the purpose of deliberate practice, and there's a lot of research on this, is actually to combat the development of habits and to do things progressively better and better. Now, yes, it sometimes takes quantity to develop quality. Obviously, MrBeast has made hundreds or maybe even thousands of videos, but the point here is that all of those quantity of videos he made was directed toward him becoming a certain quality of person. So that was deliberate practice. So now I'm going to go ahead and show my screen, and you can hear for yourself the 10x mindset from MrBeast.
Do you have a lot of guys coming to you for advice? Like,
Yes.
hey, I want to be like MrBeast.
You know, actually, here, can you pull up my Twitter? I have something cool I want to show them. I mentor YouTubers a lot. You'll probably find this cool. One of the people I've been mentoring recently, he was doing $24,000 a month, and then he recently had a $400,000 a month on YouTube. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I tweeted out the before and after of his revenue. And so, yeah, just click on that left image. So this was before I started mentoring him. He was doing 4.6 million views a month, 24 grand. And then probably like 7-8 months into it, we got him up to 45 million views, and he had a $400,000.
Obviously, he's talking about a 10x.
And what kind of advice are you giving someone like that makes such an exponential change in the amount of interactions you get?
The biggest thing is it's much easier, as weird as it sounds, it's much easier to get 5 million views on one video than 100,000 views on 50 videos. Does that make sense a little bit?
So he's talking about here, it's easier to get 5 million views on one video than 100,000 views on 50 different videos. Both equal 5 million views. And so he's talking about quality over quantity, catching bigger fish versus small fish.
Like, you could upload one great video a year and get more views than if you uploaded 100 mediocre videos. It's like, it's very exponential. Like, essentially, like, now I'm going to dial back. To do well on YouTube, you just need people to click your videos and watch them. That's literally all YouTube wants. And so if you get people to click your video 10% more and watch your video 10% longer than mine, you don't get 10% more views. You get like 4 times the views, right? So you have to think like an exponential, right? Like a 10% better video is 4 times the views, not 10% more views.
Right.
And so like once you understand that and you like funnel your energy better, it makes a big difference. So it's usually like, just like, don't make your video shit. Put in effort. Like put in way more effort. Like really hyper obsess over these videos. Like triple the amount of time you're putting into that video, because you're not gonna get triple the views. You're gonna get 10x the views. And like because like YouTube's trying to serve people the best content possible, right? They don't want to serve you 100 lame videos. They just want to serve you one good one. So it makes sense logically. Like your homepage is the curated the best videos possible. And so it's really just like making these videos really, really good, helping them build out a little bit of team, like an editor, because like, if you're doing 5 jobs and you can only put 20% of your time to each, well, if you hire an editor, he can put 100% of his time into that. So even if he's like 20% worse than you, he's still going to do a way better job just because that's where all his time's going and he's able to obsess over it,
So MrBeast literally just broke down what 10x is. He talked about how 10x is really about quality, and he talked about focusing on less but better, creating higher quality, not necessarily higher quantity. Now, you can create quantity if you want, but only if it's aimed at creating a certain level of quality. He was actually literally just talking about attention and about how rather than doing 5 different things mediocre, how you do one thing is how you do all things. And so rather than doing 5 jobs at a low level, do one job 10x better and then get a who to handle the rest. This is where 10x psychology comes in, is that you got to do less but better. That is literally what the subtitle of this book is how world-class entrepreneurs achieve more by doing less. Because you do less, but you do it at a 10 times higher quality. 10 times bigger precedes 10 times better. And so he literally explained it. You've got to think exponentially, meaning you think 10 times bigger, but also you got to focus on quality over quantity, and then get a who or who's, get a team to handle the rest so that you're doing one job exponentially better. You're getting 10 times better at what you do, and you're creating a extreme high quality versus focused on quantity. There's a great book on this subject called The Dip by Seth Godin. And he talks about how the results you get when you become the best in the world at what you do are outsized. the person who's the best in the world gets like 100 times more rewards than the person who's number 10 in the world. This is true of all fields. If you think about golf as an example, the person who gets number 1 in a certain tournament is going to make like 10, 20 million bucks, whereas the person who gets 100th place or even 10th place is going to get like 1/100th of the result. So this is why quality is the key, and why you want to focus your attention on going deep and creating 10 times better results, and then ultimately applying who, not how, where you get a team to handle the rest. First off, it frees your attention, it frees your cognitive load, and it frees your attention to go deep so that you can start catching big fish. So if you want to go 10x, you got to focus on quality, not quantity. And the nature of 10x is really about quality, not quantity. It's about creating fine dining, not fast food. It's really about true deliberate mastery in what you do. And you can become a master. You can become 10 times better at what you do. And that's why we know who MrBeast is. And if you want to go 10x, it's about you going deep into your 20% and developing 10x mastery in the things that you care about and creating 10 times more value than you did before. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in episode 8.